Hey guys, Mike here with simplenursing.com, and right now we have Nurse Barbara from Nurse IQ all the way from Canada, or if I can do the Oprah version, all the way from Canada. We are here in the studio. We're gonna be talking everything nursing, so let's get to it. All right, Barb, so tell us, America and Canada wants to know.
Yes.
What made you become a nurse? So what inspired you?
So nursing was actually my second degree.
Okay.
I started off doing my bachelor's of health sciences with the goal of going to med school. I've always loved medicine. Growing up, I would watch all of those like surgery shows and Botched or whatever.
Okay.
And I was so fascinated just by the human body and everything that it could do. The fact that you cut yourself and it magically repairs, the fact that we grow human life, it was just mind-blowing to me. And I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna end up in medicine one way or another. So I set myself off to go to med school. So first I went to do this bachelor's of health sciences degree.
Okay.
And then it was my third year going into my fourth year of university. And I'm like, okay, prepping for the MCAT, researching med schools, and then I realized how difficult it was to A, get into a Canadian med school, and B, how lengthy med school is.
Really?
Like I knew in the back of my head, I'm like, oh yeah, becoming a doctor is hard.
What was that, 6 years in Canada?
It's a lot. So you have your 4 years of bachelor's, 4 years in med school, and then there's residency.
3 or 4 years more?
Yeah, and so I was like, you know what, I really wanted to prioritize starting a family kind of young and just kind of also live my life a bit. So I'm like, you know what, let me find something that's somewhat like medicine, like being a doctor, but maybe won't be as time consuming all my life and like school wise and everything like that. So that's when I found the accelerated nursing program. So 2 years instead of 4. And I was like, perfect. I just finished my bachelor's of health sciences. I have a background in science. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this out. And so science, I always wanted to do it. The reason that nursing really stood out to me is because I received a job in that third year of schooling where I was a personal support worker for this gentleman who had ALS. Okay. So he couldn't move, he couldn't talk, he couldn't do anything for himself. But he was like fully with it. He was a really young man, very, very awful disease.
How did that affect you? Like, how old were you when you were taking care?
It was, how old was I?
Early 20s?
20?
So you
20?
were just looking at things from a book lens, and then when you saw it in person.
Yeah, and so because I was applying for, like I was writing the MCAT, I was studying for med school. I'm like, you know what, let me get some experience, like doing some kind of healthcare related work. And so I started to work with him. And it was at the same time that I started working with him that I also realized maybe med school was a little bit much. And so both of those happened at the same time. And so yeah, working with him, I'm just like,
holy crap.
in awe of how big of a connection you make with the person that you're working with. I fell in love with just seeing him every day, seeing how he was doing, seeing if he was progressing, being able to connect with his family. And there was so much of his care that I was able to be there for. And I'm like, you know what, maybe nursing would be a really good option for me because you're so involved in that patient's care from like point A to point Z. Whereas physicians, maybe not as much. So that's when I found the nursing program, the accelerated program. So I applied to that same year and I got accepted, which is so exciting. But then it was like 2 years of intense nursing rather than it being spread out over 4 years.
Which makes sense. I mean, when you first started helping that first patient, is that when it actually became real to you that, wow, what I'm doing is actually making a difference? Yeah,
I honestly, before that, I didn't really get too involved with the healthcare work at all.
It was just mostly like taking tests, getting into a program.
It was a lot of just book work and I didn't really put myself into those positions where I would be more hands-on. And this first experience, I was like, whoa, this is, it just felt so good to be helpful to someone and make someone's day just a little bit better just by being yourself and being helpful and providing them with care that they wouldn't otherwise receive. It was
it's awesome. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot. You get into like this mode of like, I gotta take boards, I gotta pass this class, and then it's like, oh crap, there's actually a person behind this with a family. Yeah, it's just so surreal knowing that what you're doing is going to affect someone's livelihood. Right?
So yeah, it was that experience is what pushed me into nursing. And I still think of him and that experience to this day, like as I'm working as a nurse.
And I mean, what an imprint. You were 20 years old and, you know, pretty young.
Yeah.
Would you recommend that anyone thinking about going to nursing get their hands on like a CNA or an aide or something like that?
Yeah, and after that experience, I continue to do stuff like this before and during nursing school, just because it helps you think about what you're learning in the books and kind of applying it to real life.
Yeah, so it's nice to see both of those things come together, the book work and the application. But also, I think what's really missing, even when I was becoming a nurse like 9 years ago, I would see nurses get out of school and then start working, just knowing that you know, they either wanted to make more pay or they were just in it for, I even heard one of the nurses, they said, yeah, I originally got into nursing because I look cute in scrubs. And I'm like, what? And it's like, oh yeah, like tests have always been easy for me, so why not nursing? And I love biology. And it's like, dude, you're taking care of someone's family and like you're, so.
Yeah, I remember walking into one of my first clinicals and it just dawned on me, like these nurses are responsible for keeping all these people alive.
Yeah.
And the things that we do or don't do, the decisions we make or the things that we catch or don't catch have massive impact. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
But you feel, I don't know, so good knowing that what you are doing is making a difference.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you guys don't know, and if you're just getting into nursing or thinking about pre-med or pre-nursing or whatever it is, just know that the doctors are usually the ones with the notepad or the books. Go in, take a look at the patient, sometimes don't even touch him other than a physical assessment, and then they'll just write some notes and orders. And it's the nurses or the physician assistants typically that will be more hands-on, but nurses are there for 12 hours. All the other providers like PAs, NPs, and MDs are just in there to make some notes and then leave, and then monitor, really.
Right. Yeah, they are there to jump in if something happens. They see their patients once a day, but they also have a bunch of patients all throughout the hospital, so it's not like they're just sitting there near your unit, like if you need them for anything. And we are there for 12 hours of the day. We know which patient went to the bathroom, which patient got up out of bed today, which patient is, you know, having difficulty breathing right now, but they were fine this morning. We know literally every detail. And so yeah, definitely like 12 to 13 hours of a nurse's day is just spent being with patients.
Do you have any regrets of not becoming an MD or going, or you more happy?
No, I have no regrets, especially after seeing doctors in the hospital and what they also have to go through. I can't imagine.
Is it residency or?
No, not even. Okay. No. But like the liability that you have, every single thing that you order,
every decision has
you make, there's an outcome to it. A lot of the time it's positive.
Yeah. So yeah, you really have to be on your toes as a doctor, right?
Yeah, and so let's say you're on whatever, a 12-hour, 24-hour night shift rotation, and your brain just has to be on at all times, and every single decision that you make greatly impacts those patients. The nurses are the ones also that are going about those orders and taking those orders and going with it. It gets tricky though, because some of the fault may also lie onto the nurse if they go with the wrong order. Like if there was like an incorrect order written, it's also the, I don't know, it's tricky because it's the doctor who wrote the incorrect order, but then the nurse that
not speaking
went
up
with it.
And okay.
So it's tricky, but definitely don't regret going to med school at all. I've had such a great time living my life right now, traveling, building my relationship with my fiance, with my friends, and a lot of that probably wouldn't have been too possible being in like the thick of med school right now.
You'd probably still be in med school right now.
Yeah, like especially if you don't get in on your first try, which is fairly common. No, med school is definitely a lot, and I'm glad I went the other way.
It's literally a decade almost that you're putting your life on, not on hold, but
you're prioritizing med school over
you
basically
literally have
everything
20%
else.
or 10% of a real personal life.
Right.
That's a crazy commitment.
Yeah.
That's insane. So I really do. If you guys are going to med school and you still want to go through it, I applaud you for it, but just know that there are other options out there. Is the reason you became a nurse still the reason that you show up every day to work?
It is, yeah. So how I was explaining that experience that I had working with the gentleman who had ALS, that was such a pivotal moment for me and just really showed me the importance of a healthcare provider who is there with the patient throughout the day, throughout the shift, and kind of gets to see that individual daily. So seeing my patients and seeing them progress and seeing them daily and seeing them get better throughout the day, sometimes get worse, and then me provide treatment and then getting better, that's really just what drives me towards being a nurse.
That's pretty cool.
Which is exciting, yeah.
It's really exciting because it's funny to hear new nurses. I mean, you've been a nurse for how long now?
4.5 years.
4.5. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're seasoned.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's funny because a lot of nurses they get into and they're just like, oh, this is not what I expected, and then it's like a big letdown. So I'm glad that it keeps on driving you.
Right. I feel, although sometimes you'll start on a unit, it's not what you expect.
Right.
You can always switch it up. If there is something on the unit that you aren't liking, if you aren't liking the patient population you're working with, there's so many other options. And medicine isn't just bedside nursing. I tell all of my followers that. I'm like, you aren't just tied to the bedside. You can work outpatient, you can work at clinics, you can do cosmetic injections. Literally, there's a huge variety when it comes to nursing. So if you aren't loving where you are right now, there's endless options as a nurse.
Well, that's one of the reasons I was confused about nursing when I was 20-ish. I worked in an ambulance before, and then I would tell my friends not to become nurses. And I'm like, no, you should not become a nurse. That's the dumbest idea ever, because I would just go to nursing homes and see nurses. I didn't know that, I was so naive back then. I didn't know that there was ER nurses, flight nurses, travel nurses, OR nurses everywhere. It's like 80% of the hospital. And so I was gonna go PA route until I started working in the ER as a tech. I'm like, oh my gosh, nurses are everywhere.
Yeah, it's cool.
So the average nurse typically reaches burnout around 5 years at bedside.
Yeah.
So statistics show that 50% of the nurses after 5 years won't be there anymore. So let's just say 10 start a new grad program. After 5 years, only 5 will be left. Do you feel like you're reaching that point, or are you gonna work bedside your whole life?
I definitely won't be working bedside my whole life.
Okay.
I see some of the older nurses on my unit that have been doing this for their whole life.
20, 30
and
years,
I cannot imagine doing that. My back after the first year of nursing, it's like I'm done.
Yeah.
Physically, it's a lot of work. I mean, it depends on which unit you're on. For me, like a telemetry med-surg kind of floor.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of work.
It can be heavy. You're on your feet a lot. You're lifting patients a lot. So just physically, from that standpoint, I could not be where I'm at right now for the rest of my life. And working 12-hour shifts, not ideal. Especially as you grow older and you want to have a family and be at home maybe a little bit more. So no, I don't see myself at the bedside forever. I do see myself involved in nursing for my whole life, though, in one way or another. Right now I have a small business that gives educational products for nurses, so that is always keeping my brain kind of going and keeping me involved with healthcare. But I may potentially transition when it comes to hospital work to something that isn't bedside. I don't know what it is.
Like clinic, or I could see you teaching.
I don't know. I could teach. I don't know. I might go and get my master's degree and teach. I love teaching. Anytime I get a student with me for the day, it's so exciting because I love showing them the ropes and just the little tips and tricks that I have as a nurse, because I was just a student 5 years ago, so I know what it's like to be a student. But just definitely not bedside forever.
Botox?
I did that.
Really, you did?
I started my own injection clinic. I need some too.
What happened to that?
COVID.
Dang it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's impossible
We'll talk
to grow
about
your
COVID.
business with COVID and everything shutting down and
Especially
opening up.
Canada and
Yeah,
Canada's on
we've
lockdown
been-
for a while.
We've been strict, and then it's you want to practice your skills But with everything shutting down every like few weeks, it's really hard to do that. And when you gain a momentum, when you're gaining clients, and then it just stops, it's tricky.
So you were working in the hospital and doing Botox?
So I started working in the hospital 4.5 years ago.
Okay.
And then maybe 2.5 to 3 years into working at the hospital, my friend and I, she's a registered nurse, we were like, you know what? We're young, we have nothing tying us down. This is something like exciting and fun. We're both girly girls. We're like, you know what? Let's try it out. So we started our own clinic.
What?
And yeah, we didn't go work for someone. We started
like a
our
pop-up,
own.
or how'd you get clients and all that stuff?
Word of mouth, social
Okay.
media.
In Toronto?
Yeah,
Okay.
just outside of Toronto,
Okay,
but
okay.
yeah. So a lot of the customers we had were followers of mine off of Instagram.
Okay.
But I mean,
How did you get started? If anyone wants to, if you guys listening want to do a Botox thing.
yeah, so the tricky thing with this
Certified?
is that no, you don't have, there's no certification.
What?
As long as you're in Ontario,
Okay.
as long as you are a registered nurse or a registered practical nurse,
Okay.
you are legally allowed to administer Botox and filler.
Canada. I'm not sure if this applies to you.
Ontario, but
Canada.
you need a medical doctor or nurse practitioner to provide the order.
But there's no training that they.
There's no technically,
Oh my gosh.
technically no, but
Oh,
obviously
man.
you don't want to go into it without any training.
Yeah, I mean, like.
So I did a course.
Get someone's like eyeball. Like,
Yeah,
alright.
give them some ptosis. But
Yeah.
no, I definitely suggest doing a training
Okay,
course. But legally speaking, a doctor can give you an order, just like in the hospital, a doctor can give you an order and you do that order.
Yeah, of course.
Same thing with Botox and dermal filler. The doctor gives you an order for half a cc
Yeah.
into the lips of whatever product, and you do it.
How did you find your doctor? Because aren't those expensive? Starting your own little.
We reached out to a bunch of plastic surgeons in our area and just
Really?
emailed them. We were like, hey, would you be interested in meeting up with this girl and I? We're starting this injection clinic and we would love for you to consider this medical director role for us. And we kind of just, I don't know, made a PowerPoint and kind of showed them everything that we were gonna do, like how everything was gonna go. And we had an NP and an MD who were interested in partnering up.
Okay.
And so it worked out, luckily.
Wait, you went with both of them or just one of them?
No, we went with the medical doctor because he
Okay.
was a plastic surgeon, like tons of experience.
What was the contract like? 500, like $500 a
No,
month?
so
or
he got paid a certain
percentage
percentage of every
of the revenue
of every
Oh,
sale,
Okay.
which for us worked out.
Yeah, because it's
It
like
was
if you don't sell
trickier,
anything,
yeah,
you don't
exactly.
pay
If we had
anything.
no clients come in, we would still owe him, let's say, $500 if we went that route instead of
Okay.
doing it per client.
That's smart. That's smart.
Yeah.
And then another question is do you get what training did you go through?
Right. So
Online or?
no, so half and half. So it's
Okay.
a program. There's quite a few
Okay.
that you can find, but the one that we went to is called APT Injection Training.
Okay.
They provide you with a bunch of online reading that you have to do
Reading?
beforehand. Yeah,
Oh.
a bunch of anatomy you have to learn, a bunch of articles you have to read
Oh,
so that you know
man.
the ins and outs of dermal filler and botulinum toxin. So you do all of that before, and it was like 2 months of prep, and then you go in for the weekend course,
It's
which
a
is
weekend course, 2 days?
just injecting. So they expect you to know everything about Botox, about filler, the
Where the
anatomy,
nerves and
everything, all
crap.
of the nerves, all of the muscles.
Dang.
What happens if you inject it here? What happens if you inject into a vein or an artery? And then the weekend course is just hands-on work. You're doing Botox one day, filler the next day.
Oh my god.
And then you're
One day
kind
of Botox and
yeah.
you're done.
You know what? Botox is fairly easy
It
to
is.
learn as long as
Okay.
you know where the muscles of the face are.
Okay.
It's fine. Dermal filler is a bit trickier because if that gets into an artery and you have an occlusion,
You can cause someone's lip to
Yeah.
be blown up.
well, you can cause like blindness.
Shut the
Yeah,
heck
if you
up.
get into the ocular, I forget what it is, but somewhere up
Oh,
here,
you
like
mean
near the
filler.
nose. Yeah, filler.
I
If
thought
that
you meant
gets
lips.
stuck in, but even in the lips, you can like cause.
Lopsidedness?
Not even like, yeah, you could have like a lot of filler in the one side over the other, but you could have where you're blocking blood flow to the lip, and so like eventual necrosis
Oh,
and
your
tissue
lip
death.
could die.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which I think experience in the hospital kind of prep me a little bit more with this position, because if there was we've had a few patients who just felt a bit dizzy or weak, so kind of dealing with that and not freaking out about it was more helpful. I feel like if I didn't have any bedside experience, I'd be kind of freaking out and like not knowing what to do, because they don't really teach you that in the course.
Did you ever make a mistake? Is that why you're saying this? Or?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but we've had clients who almost fainted on us.
Oh, really?
Right? So
'Cause needles?
Could be like hypoglycemia, could just be like the sight of needles, and they just feel a bit faint. Blood pressure drops a little bit. So knowing what to do in that situation, like lying the patient flat, giving them some juice, rest.
Yeah, so that's good. You're a nurse,
Yeah.
It's funny because I met so many nurses that actually want to do Botox and stuff. And then it's like, all right, they don't really look at the application of like doing the Botox is totally different than the business side, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be both.
Yeah, you have to.
Did you set up your own LLC or like business entity?
We did a partnership kind of thing, but you could. I mean, we started off with the lowest tier that you could start off with because we didn't know how it was going to go. Yeah. And if it was going to grow, we could have probably incorporated or whatever. But we started off on the lower side of things.
Okay. How many months do you guys have it for?
A year and a half.
Oh, it was a year and a half. Yeah. Nice.
But I mean, like with COVID, we were shut down for half of it, so.
Oh, okay. So
like
how many months
really.
before COVID? Was it the same month?
We started off in October 2019.
Okay.
So just a few months before COVID.
Okay. It's funny because I talk to so many nurses and they're like, I'm going to start this Botox center. It's going to be massive. It's like I'm the first one who ever thought of Botox.
Yeah, no. I feel like growing, especially if you're starting your own clinic, trying to grow, it's going to take years.
Any hacks for anyone listening out there?
Word of mouth is the biggest thing. So treat your clients as good as you can. I think starting off just by providing really good care, pre-care and post-care, following up really well with your clients, taking your time, explaining things to them, just making them feel as comfortable as you can so that they recommend you to their friends and family members. That's the biggest way to grow, at least how it was for us. And then just word of mouth is, I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, like,
awesome.
Word of mouth network effects is just crazy.
Yeah.
If you have a good experience, if you have a good place to eat, right, or see a good movie, you're going to tell your friends.
Yeah, exactly.
So that makes sense. Yeah, be a good nurse, make that great rapport with your clients, and yeah. All right, so you're being really humble about it. Nursing students, listen up. We have Nurse Barbara here. She's the founder of Nurse IQ, and Nurse IQ is really cool because there's like really fun badges that go right on your right on your lapel for your badge reel. I think you guys, there's a lot of nurse badges out there, to be honest, but I think Nurse IQ does it really right.
It's the best, right?
It really is, though, because there was stuff in nursing school when I was there.
Yeah.
And then when I saw your stuff, I'm like, this is really interesting, the way you organize stuff and make it fit, because the other ones, they just look clumpy and cluttery.
Yeah.
And yours is like a 2.0, 3.0 version. Yeah,
Thank you. I found one of the reasons I started is because when I first started off as a new grad, I had my little notebook and I would just write all these important things on there, like what to do when I get an admission, how to process a discharge, how to take telephone orders, like the order of draw for blood work, all these little things that you aren't really taught too much in nursing school, and you kind of just have to, when you're a new grad, there's just so much being thrown at you. So for me, I just wrote it down so that I could go back to it and refer back to it. And that's kind of how Nurse IQ stemmed. It's because I had a lot of this stuff written there, and I'm like, you know what, that'd be cool if I could make a physical product that included all of this information that nursing students and nurses could just easily refer to.
That makes sense.
And have it make it look pretty and easy to read.
Yeah, no, it really looks pretty. You guys have to see them. So they were created for you initially.
Yeah.
Okay, so for nurses by nurses, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's very. Okay, so let's talk about nursing school. What was the hardest part of nursing school, and what really pissed you off about nursing school that no one told you? Oh
my gosh, you know what? I just think that for me, because I had that previous degree and I had finished a 4-year bachelor's of health sciences degree, I thought nursing school was going to be similar to my other degree. It wasn't. Just everything about it was completely different. The amount of readings you have to do for nursing school, it's a lot. So there's no way to fit in all of these readings, all of your labs, clinicals, lectures,
Papers,
all of your
care
PowerPoint, all your
plans.
assignments. It was just a lot. I wish I had known just how much nursing school would be, and I wish I knew the fact that it's impossible to do it all.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to be selective with what you study, what you read, what you listen to. You have to pick up on what I always tell my followers is look to see what's in your PowerPoint, what your prof brings up, and then just read those parts of the textbook. You don't have to go through every single page of the textbook, every single line. Match up what you've seen in the PowerPoint and in lecture, especially if your prof mentions something 1, 2, 3 times, and then read up on those if you need further clarification, because it's impossible to read all whatever chapters by tomorrow.
That's great, because if you're watching this as a nursing student or gonna be a nursing student, Barb is telling you about how to kind of hack your instructor, because there's usually ways that instructors test, right? So some are just off the PowerPoint, some are just off the lecture, and some are just both.
Yeah.
So they're giving you like the roadmap of what to look up in the book.
Exactly, yeah. If it's not mentioned in either the PowerPoint or the lecture, or the prof doesn't bring it up at all, it's probably not of high importance, and the likelihood of you being tested on that is fairly low.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's professors that just throw in
But
whatever
you
silly
probably won't fail
questions,
an
but
exam.
again, you're not gonna fail from not knowing this one point. The point is that you're going to not spread yourself so thin over everything. You're going to focus on what's of highest priority, and you're gonna kill your test. Yeah.
What are a few things that you wish you knew before nursing school?
Okay, so I did wish I knew how hard it would be so that I would take myself on a nice vacation.
When did you figure out, oh snap?
Within the first week.
Oh.
When I saw my syllabus and I was like, I have to do 3 chapters of reading for this class, 4 chapters of reading for this class, all for the next day. You have assignments every week, your clinical, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming 100%. So I wish I knew that before going into it, so I could relax a little bit more, go on a vacation, hang out a little bit more with my friends, spend time with everyone, because during nursing school, you're kind of just locked into nursing school. I did try to give myself every Sunday off.
Okay, that's good.
So
there you go.
one day a week.
Hey.
But I wish I knew that, and then I wish I knew that it didn't matter really which nursing school I went to, because I was so stressed about going to the best nursing school in my area.
Everyone does that, yeah.
And it's not gonna make a difference in how you perform as a nurse once you're practicing as a nurse. There really isn't one school that's gonna completely transform how you would have been.
Yeah, and hospitals don't care, right?
And
as long
hospitals
as you
don't
have,
look at that.
Yeah, your NCLEX and you're good, yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I was also so stressed about is the fact that I was like, oh, I need to do well on these tests because I need to get hired by this hospital. And no one's ever asked me what my grades in nursing school were. Not my manager, not any of my patients, no one. So I wish I didn't stress so much about that.
I mean, running Nurse IQ, all the students are probably asking you, I'm gonna fail this exam, I need to have a 4.0, right? I need to get A's.
Yeah.
No one's ever asked you that in an interview.
No one's asked me that, but I'm not saying that you shouldn't study and know your stuff.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying you shouldn't completely freak out and have a meltdown over one poor grade.
B's get degrees, right?
Yeah.
Or C's.
Yeah. Or C's. Although in some nursing schools you fail if you get less than 70% or 80%. There's some that do that.
Mine was 75.
Yeah, I think mine was 70.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's not bad at all.
Have you ever personally been bullied by a nursing instructor, by your other classmates? We always have those know-it-all classmates that are like, mwah, you know.
I feel lucky to say no.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
next
didn't have
question.
any. Well, I can still. I'm
just kidding.
There isn't any overt nursing, nothing direct to me. There were some times when you walk into your clinical placement as a student, and none of the nurses are talking to you or approaching you or really wanting to work with the students. That kind of feels off sometimes.
Yeah.
But I never took that personally. I'm you know what? Maybe they just don't want to have a student for the day.
That makes sense.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But there was never any situations where it was detrimental or anything like that. And nothing. Nothing from my teachers, but I have heard sometimes that teachers somewhat bully their students, and I can't imagine being someone who provides education.
I know.
Who's also treating their students poorly.
But I mean, everyone's nice in Canada, so mostly.
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why.
Okay. So in that same thread of thought here, as a new grad, were you ever treated poorly because you were learning, or?
No, I honestly feel really grateful for my coworkers because they were so nice to me. They were always. It's because we're Canadian. It's fine. No, everyone was really, really helpful. They were understanding. They knew I was a new grad, and so I may be slower with certain things. I may ask more questions than normal. But it's unfortunate because I've had so many people come up to me and ask me, like, hey, like, I'm being bullied as a new grad. I'm being yelled at. I'm being told that, like, I don't know anything. And you're already in such a stressful position being a new grad, feeling like you don't know anything, and then for someone to come at you and then give you all of this negativity, I can't imagine having to go through that. So I definitely, I actually just spoke about this on Instagram the other day. There's two ways. If someone's just saying something stupid and out of left field, I say, forget about them. It's fun. Maybe they're having a bad day, whatever. Be the bigger person, continue to show up, be nice.
Don't
You're there for your
chocolate
patients.
chip.
If it's something that's directly affecting you, your mental health, and the way that you're treating your patients, either speak to that person if you feel comfortable doing that, or go to management and deal with it that way. So that way you have some kind of record of what's been going on if it's actually serious, because this shouldn't be affecting how you're treating your
patient
patients.
outcomes.
Because at the end of the day, that's why you're both there. And if it's going to that extent.
Did you have to like leave a unit because it was a toxic environment, or float to a toxic unit, or?
No, I've been on the same unit for all years. No, I haven't had to go to any units. Sometimes when I have been floated to other units, the nurses there maybe aren't as welcoming.
Okay, that makes sense.
But I mean, I'm just a random nurse on their unit. Everyone's not necessarily cliquey, but they all know each other, so they're all conversing, and then I'm just alone in the corner. Which I mean,
you're just
whatever.
eating your lunch alone.
I don't mind.
Okay, so, makes sense.
It's been good.
So you've been a nurse for 4 years now. Same unit, 4 years?
Yeah, same unit, 4.5 years.
What was the hardest part of being a new grad?
There are a lot of different hard parts of being a new grad. I think the first one, just being the fact that you are now responsible for these humans, not the nurse you're paired up with, not your preceptor. Just the mindset change of you being responsible for human beings.
You can't be like, call the nurse, I am the nurse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's like a shift in that sense, and that just mentally can be a lot for a lot of people, and it was for me. The other hardest part was just learning things as a new grad that I didn't learn in nursing school. So how to interact and talk to doctors, how to take telephone orders, what to do in stat situations, like what is my role as the primary nurse when something's happening to my patient, when my patient's coding, what do I do? So it's just all of these experiences where you kind of have to learn as you go. You have to learn how to answer. I remember starting off as a new grad, and I didn't even know how to transfer. Like, I knew how to answer the phone.
Hello, that's how you do it.
But how to transfer the call to another person's extension, I was like,
that's a technical skill.
I just think it's just like I hung up on the person. But
beep.
even just little things like that, just that add on to your pile of workload that you have for the day, it's a lot as a new grad. And then lastly, balancing everything during your day, because you have so many tasks to do. And then on top of all these tasks, you have random things that just pop up. Like you have to send your patient down for a CT, a family member wants an update, just all these unexpected events on top of all these tasks you have to do. So you have to really figure out how to manage your time and balance everything throughout your day.
Is it more of a technical skill of doing it, or do you think you can learn from like a simulation video, or you just have to kind of hands-on?
I think to some extent, you probably could somewhat learn. But really that feeling of anxiety when you have a billion and one things to do in a few minutes, you can't really learn that. You kind of have to be in the situation and kind of train yourself to act a certain way or train yourself to prioritize certain things over the other. I think a lot of it just comes down to doing it.
When did you actually feel comfortable as a nurse? Was there a point where you're like, oh, finally I got it?
Yeah, I'd say around the 10-month mark. A lot of nurses feel comfortable around 1 year, I'd say. That's the point where I kind of felt like, okay, I don't feel scared coming into work. I'm not anxious for my 12-hour shift.
You just be anxious, like coming into work?
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
And I feel like a lot of new grads are anxious because they don't know what the day
That's
holds.
true,
You never know how your shift's gonna go.
I was anxious as well. So.
Yeah, and so it took about 1 year for me to feel just somewhat confident coming into work and being like, you know what, whatever happens today, I got this. Whereas when you're first starting out, you don't feel that way because you haven't gone through all of these experiences and all of these situations, and you haven't learned how to manage your time and how to properly assess patients and how to react to certain situations. And there's certain things that only happen once every few months.
Oh,
like,
man, yeah.
Patients aren't coding, at least on my floor, every day. So it's not like you're used to that happening. So a lot of the things, like, it's gonna take a while for you to get comfortable with.
Yes, I mean, it's normal, right, to feel anxious in your first year.
Yeah.
Okay, nurses, new nurses, it's normal. So yeah, don't worry about that.
That's the one takeaway. And some people don't like to say that they feel anxious. I don't know why.
Yeah, right.
But a lot of people just act
They
and
just
pretend
bury it.
like, yeah, I'm doing fine, when they're not. And I just want everyone to know that we've all gone through it. Like, we all feel that same way. We are all nervous coming on to our first few shifts because we don't know what to expect and what we're going to be dealing with during the day. Especially as a new grad, when you're just learning how to use the system, learning how to document, learning how to write out orders.
Oh or like how to get your medications.
Yeah.
And any tips? Like, what helped you through it?
I think the biggest thing for me was just setting my day up for success by coming in early. I'd come in a little bit earlier than I needed to. And yes, I'm not being paid for that, but it made my shift go by so much smoother because I was able to read up on my patients. I wrote out exactly when each medication is due, exactly what tasks needed to be done, whether a dressing change needed to be done, whether a PICC dressing change had to be done, the tests that were going on that day. So I had an exact kind of schedule kind of for my day. And so I was able to time things out before my shift even started.
Oh, wow.
And so that way, if things were to pop up, I didn't feel as anxious or worried about it because I knew that I'd be able to get the other tasks done at another time. Like, I had this rough outline of how my day would go.
Nice.
So I feel like kind of doing that, coming in early, setting my, I call it my brain sheet, like my sheet of paper that has all of my information on it. Setting that up kind of put my mind at ease that, hey, I have this full day. I've scheduled out what I want to do when. That kind of helped my shift flow a little bit better.
So you'd recommend if let's just say there's a anxious new grad nurse out there watching this video, and let's just say it's their first few months, flying solo on their own, you'd recommend them showing up before their shift. You don't know which patients you're going to have, or do you know which patients?
We know. I mean, it's the shift
Schedules
assignment is posted a little bit before we arrive, so I do know as I come onto the unit.
So before you get report, you can like review, kind of like nursing school, and just fill out some information.
Yeah, exactly. Going through the patient's chart, reading up on the previous labs, knowing what's pending for the day, just kind of having that before you even get report. That way you know what to ask in report. And you aren't just so frazzled. Because the worst thing you can do is start off your shift just like frazzled and not knowing what to do, who to go see first. Especially as a new grad, because you're already anxious on top of it all. Like, coming into the shift, you're anxious. So to add on top of your already anxious state, all this other stuff where you don't know kind of what's going on and you aren't prepped for the day.
I know, I always hear that new graduates, like new to nursing, it's like the hardest skill to learn is how to juggle everything, how to prioritize what's important, but really how to anticipate what's next.
Right, so anticipating kind of what's going to happen next is tricky, especially if you're referring to anticipating what's going to happen to your patient, which sometimes, I mean, it takes a little bit of time to pick up on these skills of picking up on what your patient's saying or doing or how they're acting. Sometimes those signs can kind of tell us where our patients are kind of
Sometimes
headed.
they're so subtle.
Yeah,
And if you're
sometimes
new,
they're
you don't
really,
know.
and you can't tell. But the more you work as a nurse, the quicker you are on picking those things up, and the easier you're going to be at redirecting certain things and kind of keeping your schedule the way you planned it to be, rather than it going like a sharp left turn, and your day is just completely not ruined, but you kind of have to adjust.
I know, and that's for all the nurses out there wanting to work telemetry, med surge. One of the most trickiest things is you have a set schedule, and you have meds at a certain time and assessments at a certain time. And if one patient just takes a dump or codes, I'm sorry, not number two, but that almost came out bad. Let's say one patient codes or goes critical, it just throws off your whole day. How do you adapt to that?
Yeah, so I think first things first, you go and tend to that patient.
Okay.
But this is where good coworkers are critical, because you need your coworkers to go and make sure that your other patients remain stable, and that if something were to happen with your other patients, they go and deal with it, whether it's a call bell, whether it's they have to be sent down for a test. But you have to stay with this critical patient because they're critical, and if you don't provide any treatment, they're going to get even more critical. And then your day's even worse than it is right now.
Yeah.
So definitely stay with that patient and deal with it right then and there. Call the provider, let them know what's going on. As a new grad, what I really like to do was, if I had the time to, just write quickly on a piece of paper what I wanted to tell that provider, the key points, what I wanted to mention of my assessment, the vitals, what's going on, what kind of treatment we need, because sometimes when you're on the phone, you get a little bit flustered with the situation at hand. So even just jotting down the few little things that you want to make sure you mention to the provider
on your
over the phone, on my little brain sheet or a little piece of paper, whatever it may be. And then go ahead with that treatment plan that the provider gives you. So definitely staying, obviously, with your patient and dealing with that situation at hand. And once you're done with this critical situation, you're going to be flustered, and you're going to have to kind of go back to a normal state of thinking and go about your day, which now, as a nurse of 4.5 years, 5 years, it's easier for me to do. I can just be in a code 1 second and then go see my other patients the next. As a new grad, that's not the case.
No, it's your first time doing it.
Yeah.
It's like having your first baby.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
I remember after my first code, I cried, and I left early. Like, I left to go home a little bit earlier than I was supposed to, because it was just a lot on you. With it being your patient, and then you start thinking, what did I do? What didn't I do? Could I have prevented this? Like, oh my God, this patient's dead now.
Yeah.
It's a lot on you.
Yeah, how did you process that, I guess, initially? What would you use to cope?
Initially, I let my emotions out. I'm like, you know what? There's no point in trying to hide this right now. Like, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And luckily, well, not luckily, but the first time I did have the code experience, I was still a student.
Okay.
So I'm glad to have gone through that experience as a student.
Okay.
And it was my very last placement where it was just me and one preceptor.
Wow.
But he was technically like my patient, like me and my preceptor's patient. And so, yeah, I definitely just let my emotions out, and I talked it out with my preceptor. It was really nice to have someone to talk to. So if you're a new grad nurse, definitely talk it out with your coworkers, let them know how you're feeling. But it's completely normal to feel overwhelmed and emotional and feel like you could have done this, you could have done that. Like, why didn't this happen this way? Why didn't I do this to prevent this from happening? It's a lot. And then you learn as you go through nursing. It's kind of bad to say, but you turn those emotions off.
Yeah. Well, you learn how to balance it, really.
Yeah.
It's funny because some say, like, in a bad way, desensitized, but at the same time, you can't carry all that crap with you.
Well, that's the thing. You have to go from this patient, and then you also have, at least on my floor, I have 4 patients during the daytime. So I'm like, I still have 3 other lives to look after. I can't completely ignore these other patients and not give them my all just because a situation went sour.
Yeah. And you got to have like a poker face in a sense, because your patient could have just literally died or passed away.
Yeah.
And then your patient next door, you'd have to be like, oh, here's your water.
Yeah.
Especially if they're being crabby and they're like, hey, I've been waiting so long.
Yeah.
So, and they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's funny sometimes because obviously when a code's happening, the alarm's going off over the PA system. And you'll hear what floor it's on, what room it's in, and then so I go see my patient next door of the person that's coding, and then he asks you after the code, oh, so what happened next door? Did the patient make it alive? And you can't really say.
Yeah.
You can't give out any of this information, so you kind of have to also learn how to deal with those conversations as a new grad nurse, especially when you're feeling emotional and you don't really, you really have to learn how to manage that situation.
Yeah, and like be diplomatic around it.
Yeah.
And package it and process it, not necessarily shove it down into like, you know, shove your emotions down in a deep dark place. But yeah, it's a learned skill.
Yeah.
When did you feel like you actually figured that part out? Was it a year, 2 years? Was it? Because you worked during COVID, right?
I was working during COVID, not on a COVID floor, but at times I would get pulled to the ICU to help out if they were short-staffed or if they just had too many patients. Thankfully, I wasn't on the COVID floor because I can't imagine being...
I thought every floor was a COVID floor at one point. No,
well,
kind of?
No, what we did in our hospital is that we kept the respiratory floor as the COVID floor. Because they had all of the double door rooms for like the circulation purposes. So they were the COVID floor. And the ICU obviously had a COVID section. So I went down a few times to help out if they were short-staffed. But COVID situations, you definitely would have learned how to manage your emotions well. I can't imagine being a new grad.
Did you ever have to experience like the hospital morgue being filled up with dead bodies or anything crazy during that time in your hospital, or?
No, so because I wasn't dealing directly with COVID patients all the time, I didn't really have any idea as to how
like what the front lines
busy it was or anything like that. But we would get reports daily of how many COVID patients were in the hospital, and luckily in Ontario we weren't doing too bad.
Wasn't oversaturated? Okay.
It was,
like
at least not in my hospital. It wasn't like
good.
Too overloaded with COVID, so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, of course. Was there ever a point during this first 10 months of being a new grad that you were just overwhelmed to the point of like, I don't even know if I can do this? Was there any of those, you know, come to Jesus moments where you're like, I might not do this anymore?
Yeah, when you say that, one specific shift comes to mind, one specific night shift comes to mind. As and where I work, we work both days and nights, a mixture of both. So there was one night shift where it was with a dementia patient, and we just could not get the patient to calm down and not be agitated. They were really restless overnight. No treatment was really working on them. They were waking up the unit. They were out in the halls. It was a lot as a new grad, and then trying to balance out all my other patients and doing care for all my other patients. And it got to a point where I almost broke down. So I told my coworker, I said, I just need to go downstairs for 2 minutes just to take a breath. Otherwise, I am going to start crying.
I'm gonna scream. Wait, so let me get this straight. So it was a dementia patient, which if you guys don't know and never taken care of a dementia patient, they're like a toddler, basically.
Yeah.
They get out of bed, there's huge fall risk, right?
Huge
which goes
fall
on
risk,
you.
Which
it's your fault.
On me. It's on me.
It's like, yeah.
And it's a really tricky situation because they don't know that what they're doing is going to harm them. And they don't want me to...
They get
it's like
aggressive.
They're losing their independence. They feel that they're losing their independence if I were to offer assistance.
Right.
And so they don't want that. They want to do things on their own, but then it's on me if something were to happen.
Did they ever hit you or get violent or?
Yeah.
You got smacked?
Yeah, I've been smacked a few times. I've gotten stuff thrown at me a few times. And those situations really make you question what you're doing with your life. But you have to bring yourself back and remind yourself you're here to provide good care to these people.
Yeah.
They don't know that what they're doing is harmful, although
it's so
sometimes
frustrating.
it feels like it is. Sometimes it feels like they're pointing you out and they're just giving you a hard time, but they truly don't know what they're doing. And so those times are really difficult. So that one night as a new grad, I had this dementia patient that just all night long was keeping us busy and on our toes. And regardless of what we did, nothing calmed the patient down.
So what got you through that shift? And coworkers, did you guys do sitters
Yeah,
or
no,
rotate
so
something?
we didn't have any sitters, which was unfortunate. And another thing that maybe some people don't know is that at least where I'm from in Canada or in Ontario, we don't really have nurse techs or CNAs.
Really? You
to
guys
help
don't have
us out.
CNAs?
Yeah, no.
Nothing, no assistance.
No, not at least in my hospital.
Okay.
We don't really have anyone other than
Just the
nurses that are doing everything from A to, like from watching the, sometimes in very specific situations, if a patient is like huge dementia issue, family will stay or we will have a sitter, but we don't have CNAs that help us out with like bed baths.
You literally have to do everything.
Yeah. And so in that situation overnight, really what helped me was my coworker. Without a good team of coworkers, nothing in nursing is possible.
Okay.
So that's when they ask you in interviews, if you're a team player, you better be a team player if you're going to nursing, because there's no way that you or your coworkers are going to survive. Because it's times like those where if I didn't have my coworker who was supportive and who was taking care of the other patients while I was dealing with this one, there's no way I would have been able to handle that night, and it would have just been...
It's been overwhelming and
Yeah, it
stuff.
would've been too much.
Have you ever worked on with a non-helping coworker or non-helping team, or has everyone just been super helpful in Canada?
No, there are maybe some people that are more helpful than others.
Okay, that's fair.
Which is fine. No one's ever
Over the top helpful.
not given me help if I needed it, right? If I'm drowning, there hasn't ever been anyone who's just been like, no, you can handle it all on your own. There are some people that will help out a bit more than others,
that
which
makes
is
sense.
great.
Okay.
But again, I think being helpful with your coworkers, it's not like you have these 4 patients, so I don't care about them. Like I am here for all of the patients. It's not like just because they're your patients, I don't care.
No, but it's true, because like what you mentioned a little bit ago, if your patient codes and you have 3 other patients that require insulin, antibiotics that are on schedules, and then a beta block that's on a schedule, you're gonna need some overlapping.
Yeah, there's no way to do nursing without having a team.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest things for an interview. You gotta be a team player.
Yeah.
Any more interview tips that you give out there?
Ooh, I always say practice your answers out loud before going in for the interview, just to monitor how quickly you're speaking, B, to see what your answer actually sounds like out loud, because sometimes in your head, like it sounds good, but then you're saying it out loud and you're like messing things up, you're fumbling over your words, you think of a better way to say it. I think practice interview questions before going in is really helpful. That way it also makes the interview feel just a little more natural to you. Like you've done this before.
Okay.
It's fine.
What do you mean, like practicing questions? What kind of questions where can you get these questions, and how can you anticipate the interview?
Google's your best friend.
Okay.
Google has a ton of practice questions when it comes to nursing.
I heard you can Google interview questions at the hospital you're applying to, and it might spit something out.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, Tamina, the other nurse we were interviewing, she's like, and she's like, and you should probably like Google like the mission statement of the hospital and include that.
Yeah. Tie in those key words that your hospital brings up in their mission and vision statements.
Oh, buzzwords,
and tie in those key words, like mine, for example, is really big on compassionate care. So like using those keywords both in my resume and in my cover letter, and during the interview, it kind of hits their priorities.
Yeah.
So
I would be a great nurse here because I have compassion and care. There you go. Resume tips. I mean, it's been a while since you applied, but do you
But I
remember
help out
anything?
a lot of my followers with resumes and cover letters and stuff like that. So
Any big recommendations, like key points of
the biggest thing I'd say is try to keep it just to a single page, like no more than 2 pages. No one wants to be reading over more than 2 pages of a resume. And then when you are writing out your previous experiences, I probably wouldn't include too many things that aren't healthcare related.
Like McDonald's or no?
Pardon?
McDonald's?
I mean, if you had a leadership role at McDonald's, if you're a good team player, I mean, it's not, as long as it can tie into nursing in one way or another.
Okay,
that's fine. Just if something's like way out of the left field and that you did like years ago, there's no need to include that. And then when you are describing those tasks that you performed at work, use action verbs.
Okay.
I found that using action verbs just makes your statements sound a lot better than
like what? Making sandwiches, working the line. I don't know.
I don't even know. I have a whole list of them I have a new grad resume guide that I provide to students.
Okay, new grad resume guide. Where can they find this?
If you go to my Instagram at Your Nursing Educator, it's linked in my bio.
Nurse IQ as well, or no?
Not on Nurse IQ.
No, it's not Nurse. Okay.
Just Your Nursing Educator.
Your Nursing Educator on Instagram?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's in the Instagram bio. I have a new grad guide that goes over resume. I have different templates.
Okay.
I have a cover letter template. I have resume tips and then interview questions and answers.
Do you guys have brain trees as well?
What?
Or do you have brain, like the little brain?
Brain sheets.
Brain
yeah,
sheets.
I included brain sheets. I have a clinical placement survival guide.
What? Okay.
And a nursing school study guide. So brain sheets are in those too.
Okay.
Which I recommend. I love having a brain sheet on me.
All right, if you guys are nursing students or new grads, go to Your Nursing Educator on Instagram. I think we were gonna link to you as well, so yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We Gucci. Okay. One last thing about resumes. Cover letters. Do you ever use a cover letter? Do they even use cover letters? What the heck is a cover letter?
Sometimes, you know what? A lot of the days now when you're applying to a job, it's all online.
Yeah, that's true.
If they ask for a cover letter, you're gonna put one in. If they don't, you don't need to. But I always bring one with me to the job just to have. I'd rather be over prepared than not have something that they're asking for.
Yeah.
So I always have one on me.
What the heck is a cover letter? Because we never had to do that when I was applying.
This
just tells you about yourself, or?
It kind of, it gives you a little bit of background of yourself, why you're applying to the position, why you think you'd be a good candidate for the position.
You're a team player and you have compassionate care.
Exactly. And it gives you, it tells them why you want the position and a little bit of your history of
your journey and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But you also want to keep that short and sweet. You don't want a whole essay on yourself.
Keep it to like 2 pages max.
No.
Like that. No. I mean the whole thing.
Oh, the whole thing. Yeah.
Job history.
Fine. Yeah.
Cover letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, guys, that wraps it up. We have been here with Nurse Barb. You guys can get some free brain sheets as well as resume tips, cover letter tips, job tips and tricks, and even some nursing cheat sheets that go on your little reel. So guys, follow her at Your Nurse Educator on Instagram and then also nurseiq.com. All right, guys, thanks for joining.
Don't be scared.
Be prepared. See you guys in the next episode.